to begin the class session. First of all, subscribe to our channel. What I want to say to the YouTube audience is to please subscribe and click or whatever it is that you do on like, thumbs up, so that we can get more exposure, hopefully. To subscribe to the John Ray channel. To click on thumbs up, I like. All right. We're going to do lesson number 5 today. It's the final lesson in Christian discipleship. And the title of our lesson is Marks of a True Disciple. So a true disciple is marked by the way he conducts himself. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we start that, I want us to look at and kind of continue the discussion that we were having last week at the end of the class. We ran so long last week, and I looked up this scripture while I was standing here flipping, and found the scripture, and then was checked by the Spirit to just cut this off. We got to quit somewhere, so let's quit. And so today, I'm tricking the Spirit that checked me, and I'm going to start with this. But the discussion at the end of last week's lesson had to do with Jewish people being in every country all over the world, and we started talking about it because of recent television commercials about organizations that are soliciting funds to help the Jews, to get the Jews out of this place or out of that place and get them out of their squalor. And let me tell you that most Jews don't live in squalor. My experience with them, and I've known quite a few over the years, but only in this country.
I was going to say, you've known the ones in America, though, John.
Yeah. So maybe the ones in these other countries have and are living in squalor, and maybe they do need help. But anyway, the question came up as, how did they get scattered all over the place? And so I turned to Jeremiah, and that's where I want to start today. Jeremiah chapter 29. And this is not the only passage of Scripture that gives this kind of indication. But it's certainly one of them, and it's the one that I guess you would say is my favorite one, because it's the one I keep going back to. It's the one I keep reading. And when I say keep reading, I've read it in this class more than once already, I think. But anyway, the question came up last week of how did it happen, or what caused the Jews to get scattered from Israel all over the world. And I'd like to start in Jeremiah chapter 29, and I hate to do this, as always, you know, but I'll start with verse 15 instead of verse 1. And this is talking about the Jewish people at the time they were in captivity in Babylon. And starting with verse 15, Jerry says, because ye have said. Now the ye is the Jewish people. He says, because ye have said, the Lord hath raised us up prophets in Babylon, which was true. Know that thus saith the Lord of the King that sitteth upon the throne of David, and of all the people that dwelleth in this city, and of your brethren that are not gone forth with you into captivity. Now, that's saying there was some of them didn't go to Babylon. Some of them, and I've told you that back when we studied that, the very young and the very old stayed in Israel. Nebuchadnezzar just wanted the young, smart guys, the strong guys, the fellows that he could use to some advantage. He didn't want to have to support the ones that couldn't take care of themselves, whether they be young or old. Anyway, here verse 17 says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will send upon them, and the them he's talking about is the Jews, the Jewish people. I'm going to send upon them the sword. I'm going to send the famine. I'm going to send the pestilence. And I will make them like vile figs that cannot be eaten. They are so evil. So you wonder where the Jews got their reputation and why people don't like them around the world. Okay? Verse 18, he says, and I will persecute them with the sword, and with the famine, and with the pestilence, and will deliver them to be removed to all the kingdoms of the earth. See, that's the answer to the question that was raised last week in the discussion at the end after I'd kind of completed the class, and we went on and on and on talking about these kinds of things. Well, God himself, this verse says, I'm going to have them removed to all the kingdoms of the earth. Not only removed, but I'm going to have them to be a curse, and an astonishment, and an hissing, and a reproach among all the nations whither I have driven them. So this was God's idea back in roughly 550 years before Christ, is roughly the time that Jeremiah might have been writing chapter 29. I don't know exactly, but somewhere in that range. 550 years before Christ, God was so fed up with the Jewish people being disobedient and worshiping idols that he said, this is what I'm going to do to them. And he's going to send them, scatter them all over the world and to all nations. And so now our current conversation is about bringing them back to Israel. And there are a lot of organizations that have, I'll say, sprung up to do that, to bring the Jews back to Israel. Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of Jews that don't want to go back to Israel. The ones that live in this country, they got a better life here than they would have in Israel. And they don't have any real desire to go to Israel. And I told just a brief little part of a story that I have a good friend, was I would call a very good friend, when he lived in Houston, a Jewish fellow. He doesn't live in Houston anymore, he lives in Colorado. And he and I talk on the phone every once in a while, but he and his family they have their roots established in the Rocky Mountains. And they don't have any interest in uprooting and going home to Israel. Okay? So, most of the things that we hear are generalities and not specificities or specific. But let me read one more verse to get to the end of the paragraph. Verse 19 says, because they have not hearkened to my words, saith the Lord, which I sent unto them, the words that I sent unto them by my servants the prophets. Rising up early. The prophets worked hard. They got up early in the morning. And I sent them. But ye would not hear, saith the Lord. So, if you're one of God's chosen people, I'm not talking about Jews now, I'm talking about Christian kind of people, you better pay attention to what God says. Otherwise, you may get ended up sending all around the world and all these nations if you don't pay attention to what he tells you to do. Okay? That's just Christian discipleship is what we've talked about for the last 4 weeks. This is the 5th and the final lesson of Christian discipleship. But if you're going to be a disciple, you gotta live like he says for you to live. And then the title, again, I will have said it before, of our lesson today is the marks of a true disciple. Well, let me just in general tell you before we start reading in Galatians chapter 5, which is in Paul's writing in the beginning of our lessons, our study text today, that the very first mark of a true disciple is a 4-letter word: love. Love. You not only love him, but you love one another. And you love one another as much as you love yourself. You do for people whatever needs to be done at the time that's within your power to do. And when we all gather together as a group, we can provide some pretty nice help. And this church has been, since Dorothy and I have been coming here for 31 years now, 30 years and 4 months, yeah. That has gone on mission trips and built churches and done a variety of things, primarily in Mexico, but also in Peru and somewhere in Africa that I can't pronounce. I don't know the name of the place. Zambia. So we've not been, or at least I don't think we've been stingy, but it might be that people could have done something better than what was done? I don't know. That's between each individual, each disciple. That's between each disciple and their God as to what you do and what you don't. So let's look at the beginning of our study text today is in Galatians 5, and I would like to start at verse number 1, not verse number 16. The study text is verses 16 through the end of the chapter, verse 26. But let's read the first 15 verses to get a foundation and a background for what it is that Paul is talking about. Now, let me point out to you before I read it, on my trusty little map here, I got Paul's missionary journeys this time, and the black arrows are his first missionary journey, and he started from Antioch, and he went over here to Cyprus, and then up here to Pamphylia, and up into the southern portion of Galatia. And he went to several different churches in that area, and then just came back to Antioch. It was after that he wrote this letter. So he had already made this trip, and it's believed in theological circles out there and the writings that I have read and so forth that this was written roughly 50 years AD. So that would be 20 years, give or take, after Jesus was crucified, buried, resurrected, and ascended. Roughly 20 years after that, Paul made his missionary journey, and he comes back from his missionary journey, and he writes this to the Galatians. Now, the book of Galatians is thought to be the first letter that Paul ever wrote. And he was kind of rough around the edges, is my observation, meaning that the rest of his letters seem to have a little different tone to them than Galatians. I like Galatians. It's for this week anyway, it's probably my favorite book in the Bible. And one of the reasons is that Paul, he gets real. And right in the very beginning, he has trouble with another very famous disciple of Jesus named Peter. And he gets in Peter's face and he says, Peter, you can't preach one thing to the Gentiles and another thing to the Jews. There's just one. And it's for all of us together. Well, Peter hadn't yet come to that realization at the time that Paul was writing this, and I don't know, I don't remember exactly the timing of when Peter was on the housetop and the vision came to him of a sheet coming down from heaven, knitted to four corners and having all manner of animals in it. And the Lord saying to him, Peter, take and eat. And Peter said, no, those are unclean animals. And God said to him, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, and this is the St. John version, that he said to Peter, what I say I have cleansed, don't you call unclean. Anyway, Galatians chapter 5, verse 1. stand fast, therefore. Now, the therefore, that word implies that he's talking about the first 4 chapters that I haven't read. Well, it's got a bunch of stuff in it that Paul has said to them that he's saying, stand fast, therefore. Now, bear in mind that Paul had already followed this black arrow and went over here into Galatia, the southern part of Galatia, and returned to Antioch before he wrote this letter. And the reason that he wrote it, apparently, is that some other teachers or missionaries came behind him and was teaching things different than Paul. And basically what they were teaching was, look, you got in order for you to be one of God's people, you got to be circumcised, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. That's required by the law. And Paul was teaching liberty in Jesus. And it didn't matter whether you followed the law or not in Jesus. So look at what he says again. I'll start over again. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free. And don't be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Now, the yoke of bondage he's talking about was the law. Don't be entangled in the law. Behold, verse 2, I, Paul, say unto you that if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. For I testify again to every man that is circumcised that he is a debtor to do the whole law. So if you're relying on circumcision because that was the covenant, the mark of the covenant that God gave to Abraham and his people, he's saying that if you're relying on that to save you, then Christ is of no benefit to you at all. And so you have to keep the whole law. But Christ is become, verse 4, of no effect unto you, whosoever of you are justified by the law. Ye are fallen from grace. Now he's saying they were fallen from grace because when he made his trip on this black arrow and went around, he preached Christ and grace of Christ. And they accepted that. And then now some other teachers have come behind him and said, yeah, Paul wasn't teaching you right, and you got to do these other things. And Paul is saying, if you do that, then you have fallen from grace. We often in this class have the discussion of whether it's possible to lose your salvation or not. And this is another indication in Scripture where it is possible. It's less possible for you and me, aren't we blessed? Because of living 2,000 years later and being able to read the whole book and see how that it fits together. But at this particular time, only a few years had passed. And everybody was still trying to figure this thing out. And so Paul is saying here to them that if you get circumcised just to be saved, you've fallen from grace. Verse 5, for we through the Spirit wait for the hope of righteousness by faith. we through the Spirit. It's got nothing to do with flesh. It's got nothing to do with any cutting on, or even for that matter, tattooing. You don't gain any points by tattooing a cross on your shoulder or on your back or the face of Jesus or something like that. And that doesn't gain you any points at all. It's only through the Spirit that we hope for righteousness, and that's by faith. For in Jesus Christ, verse 6, neither circumcision availeth anything, nor uncircumcision availeth anything. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. But faith, which worketh by love, that's what matters. Now, he didn't go on and say that, but I'm adding that in the King John Version. It's faith which worketh by love. That's what matters. Ye did run well, in verse 7. Who did hinder you that ye should not obey the truth? So he's asking a question by writing this letter after he's already done this trip and got these people saved. He's now asking them a question. He's saying, who hindered you anyway that caused you to fall from grace? That caused you to fall out of my teachings? Who was it that hindered you? Verse 8, this persuasion cometh not of him that calleth you. A little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. And that's just talking about that's talking about a lot of things, but in general, there are people who don't know what they're talking about that will throw out some scriptural principle or some godly principle, and it's not godly at all. The principle is not godly, it's not scriptural, but it sounds like it comes from the scripture. And I'm actually pretty famous for that. I know that none of you all know that in this room, but in my regular life out there, just having discussions with people about anything, I'll say, well, I think that's in the Bible. Pretty sure that's in the Bible. When all I'm doing is joking, pulling their arm and their whatever. It's in the Bible. And I know I can cause confusion that way, and persuade somebody of something, and so I always follow that up by saying, that was just a joke, that was just a joke. That's not the Bible. Verse 10, I have confidence in you, Paul said. I have confidence in you through the Lord, that ye will be none otherwise minded. But he that troubleth you, now that he that troubleth you, go back to verse 7, it says, who did hinder you? Well, in verse 10, it's in the middle of it, whoever it was that hindereth you shall bear his judgment, whosoever he be. And I, verse 11, brethren, if I yet preach circumcision, why do I yet suffer persecution? then is the offense of the cross ceased. Now, we could spend a long time talking about what that verse means, and I don't have the time to do so. This is just laying a foundation for our lesson, starting with verse 16. But we're just now at verse 12. He says, I would they were even cut off which trouble you. Do you see what verse 12, what Paul is saying? He says, I wish whoever it was that came and preached to you something that was not biblical or scriptural, I wish they'd just be cut off. He doesn't say that I wish I could convert them to Christianity. He's saying conclusively there, I just wish they'd, pardon me for being so crude, but he's saying, I wish they'd just go to hell.
I thought that meant being killed.
Excuse me?
I thought that meant being killed.
Well, but being killed without Christ, the result is not good. Verse 13, for brethren, ye have been called unto liberty. Now, there's a question about liberty, because the libertines or the liberals would have you believe that you can do anything, and God's grace, Jesus' grace, covers it. But that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about you have the liberty to be, you Galatians have the liberty to be in God's family, even without having to follow the law. But you still must love one another. You don't have the liberty to hate. No. For brethren, verse 13, ye have been called unto liberty, only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh. That means don't use that liberty to hate somebody or to get even or whatever. But use that liberty, right at the end of verse 13, by love serve one another. That's what we have liberty to do. Who would have thunk it? This whole thing means we have the liberty to be nice to one another, to serve one another. That's the mark of a disciple of Jesus of Nazareth. And that's what we're talking about, even though this particular verse is not in our study text. Talking about the marks of a true disciple, we're getting there. Verse 14, for all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, Jesus said it a little different. He said that, but the question wasn't the same. So his answer was not the same, but he gave two laws. The first was to have no other gods before me, and the second was, and love your neighbor as yourself. But in Paul's writing, he says, look, you can fulfill the whole law if you just love your fellow man. Verse 15. Here's the opposite. But if ye bite and devour one another, take heed that ye be not consumed one of another. What happens there is somebody bites or devours, and the other person just wants to get even. And that mostly is a traffic phenomenon. When somebody cuts in front of you, your fleshly impulse is to speed up, cut around, and we cut in front of them.
Not anymore. I roll my window down and say, brother, my Sunday school teacher told me there's room for us all. You come on over
Come
here.
on over.
Room for one more.
No, I got one more. No, let me get my RPG out.
Yeah.
I take it that's a gun.
I don't
Is
even,
that a
I
gun?
Rocket propelled
Oh, okay.
brigade.
don't even use any verbiage anymore.
Just let me help you where you want to go.
Peggy, I might use a little bit.
Yeah.
But John's version helps a whole lot.
Yes, it does. You keep us from
45.
going to jail, John.
45,
Well-
you need a helmet.
Driving around here now, you gotta think of like you're playing bumper cars.
Yeah, that's almost, that's pretty much true. I want to announce this morning and give my wife some recognition because I don't remember what day it was, Thursday, I think, Thursday. We were driving down Rayford Road, and I was in the middle lane, and there was traffic. I mean, traffic in both lanes on both sides of me and in front of me. And there's a guy come over to the left from over there, and before I had a chance to say, she said, "Come on over, fella." So,
See, you trained us all very well.
Yes.
listen,
I need to repeat the course though.
yeah, there's nothing that I know of so important as a destination to get to that you can't get over somebody cutting in front of you.
That was me cutting in front of you.
Was it?
Thanks, Dorothy. I was in a rush.
Yeah. Okay, here we are at the lesson then. So this I say then, verse 16. This I say then. Now the then refers back to all these 15 verses that we read to get down to this place. He said, because of all of that, I'm going to say some more. I'm going to say, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. If you just will be godly, heavenly, scripturally, biblically, loving whoever it is in the car beside you that cuts in front of you, and you don't even know who they are, and they may very well have a bumper sticker that says, honk if you love Jesus, or something like that, you know.
Worst one.
Say what?
That's the worst one.
Yeah. Yeah. Verse 17. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit lusteth against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other. Meaning the flesh and the Spirit are contrary. But we have to deal with them every day because we live in the flesh, but we have a spirit. And therefore there is contrariness in us. So that, the end of verse 17, so that ye cannot do the things that you want to do. Yeah, you'd like to get even, but you just can't. We're talking about the marks of a disciple. This is the way that people tell whether you're a Christian or not, a disciple of Christ. Verse 15 says, if you be led of the Spirit, you're not under the law. Now, The works of the flesh are manifest. I mean, they're all over the place. They're everywhere in our society. They're all around us. And they are these. They are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, if I had been writing this, and I'm not trying to take Paul's place, and I'm not arguing with Paul here, but I would have started with idolatry, not adultery. And the reason is, and you've heard me many times, the one thing that ticks God off more than anything else is if you worship an idol. If you worship some other God than Him. Verse 20 again. Idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like. Now let me tell you, when I was, I guess 17 years old, I was trying hard to be a peacemaker. There was I was out of town playing in a junior golf tournament, and I and 5 of my golfer buddies was in a car driving around the town at night, a place called Okmulgee, Oklahoma. It's south of Tulsa, 50 miles or something like that. Anyway, there was a group of local guys there that weren't golfers that wanted to fight us. And I didn't want to fight. And none of my buddies wanted to fight. But for whatever reason, this bunch of 15 guys or so wanted to take on us 6 fellows and beat the soup out of us. Well, I was riding in the back seat behind the driver, and the driver had his window down, and he was talking to these guys and trying to get them to understand some reason. And there was some of them were standing in front of the car, so my driver couldn't drive on. So, well, he could have, but it wouldn't have been pretty if he had driven on. So anyway, I rolled down my window at the back, and that's the mistake I made. Because I said to the fellow, I said, "Come on, man, we don't want to fight." He said, "Yeah, I want to fight you." And I said, "Man, I'm not going to get out and fight you." I said, "You outweigh me 60 pounds or something like that. You're a lot bigger than I am. I'm not going to get out and fight you." And he said, "How much do you weigh?" And I told him 129 pounds. And he said, "Well, I weigh 125. And I said, "Oh, man, you're a lot bigger than that." He said, "You calling me a liar?"
Oh, no, here we go.
And the guys in front of the car had moved away because they came around to listen to this conversation. So the guy driving the car goes up. Well, the fellow standing next to me outside the door, just with his left hand, reaches in with his fist like that and hits me right in the nose as the car accelerated, broke my nose, and scattered blood all over the place. And I was just trying to be a peacemaker. I didn't want to fight. These in verse 21, envyings, murders, drunkenness, and revelings is what I'm going to call these guys were out there making a bunch of trouble, is all it amounted to. And I got involved right in the middle of that. Of the which, Paul says, I tell you before, as I've also told you when I was on the Black Arrow making my trip through there in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Now, I don't believe that this, what my experience is going to keep me from inheriting the kingdom of God. Because I was trying to make peace. But I got involved in a reveling. I got involved in a rowdy bunch of hoodlums or whatever. But the fruit of the Spirit, verse 22, is love and joy and peace and long-suffering and gentleness and goodness and faith and meekness and temperance. Against such there is no law. Well, I was trying. Let me describe one more. The 5 fellows that I was my friends that were golfers, all 5 of them were underage, just like I was underage. I was 17 years old, but all 5 of them was drinking beer. I didn't drink any beer. I wasn't in the wrong in any way, and I tried to be a peacemaker there, and there is no law against what I did. But I got hit anyway. Verse 24, and they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. And if we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of haughty, vain glory. Let us not be desirous of being in the spotlight. Not provoking one another, not envying one another.
Well, you were out driving around with a bunch of drinking underage kids, right?
Yeah.
And you don't think you were doing anything wrong?
Obviously I was, but not in. I don't think I was doing anything wrong in God's sight, because I was not in control there. I was under the care or influence of the fellow who owned the car and who was driving the car.
You got in the car, though.
Well, they weren't drinking until after I got in the car.
It's just one of those things, you know. Like you're kind of once, if you're riding along with the people who went and robbed a bank, you're in the car, you're going to jail.
Well, I'm the only one that went to jail that night. And when I say that, I didn't go to jail, but I went back to the motel with a big ice pack on my nose, and you know, slept almost zero the entire night, so I suffered because of that. Let's look at 1 John's writing. John, who was a true disciple. 1 John chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. here's what John said. Now, let me tell you that this letter, they believe was written around the year 80, which would have been 50 years after Jesus was crucified and gone up. And it was, according to my understanding from readings that I have, it was directed to this area around Ephesus, the little towns around Ephesus, and I don't know how far out around, but it mentions Ephesus that I think that John was writing to, and this would have been 20 years after, or 25 years after Paul wrote the book of Ephesians to the people at Ephesus. But here's what he says in verse 1 of chapter 3. Look here, behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Can you imagine that? Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. And ye know that he was manifested to take away our sins. And in him is no sin. Now, I'm going to go back to verse 4 for a minute, because it talks about sins being transgression of the law. And we just spent some time in Galatians where Paul was telling people we have liberty from the law. But if you read the whole book, the principles that God set forth in his law still are expected of us, that we still do the things that he wanted us to do, or it be sin. And it doesn't say anywhere in there that you can't go to a skating rink, or you can't go bowling, or you can't play golf, or you can't play tennis, or any of those things. It doesn't say that. Verse 6 says, whoever abideth in him and sinneth not, or whoever abideth in him does sin not. Whosoever sinneth hath not seen him, neither known him. Little children, let no man deceive you. He that doth righteousness is righteous, even as God is righteous. He that committeth sin is of the devil. That guy, that fellow that cut in front of me. And now it probably wasn't Tom, but back then it was Tom. But
you
now.
Say honk if you love Jesus and you didn't honk.
Yeah. He that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. Yes, he did. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested. Meaning, it's this purpose that Jesus came to earth, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Verse 3, 1 John chapter 3, verse 8. You ought to really mark down the last half, highlight it, do whatever, underline it, circle it, because this gives the purpose, the reason the Son of God came here was that he might destroy the works of the devil. Verse 9, whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him. And he cannot sin, because he is born of God. In this, the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil are also manifest. Whosoever doeth not righteousness, they're the children of the devil. They're not of God. Neither he that loveth not his brother. If you don't love your brother, your sister, your neighbor, then you're not of God, is what John is saying in the end of verse 10 there. And that concludes that portion of our study text, but our time is up. So you have homework in 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 through 21. It basically says all of this same stuff that we've already read in Galatians and in 1 John chapter 3. But
God is love.
I will quit today. God is love. God is love. God is love.
Chapter 4.
And the marks of a disciple is love more than anything else. Jesus said, the way they will know that you are my disciples are the way you love one another. That's a paraphrase, but
Birds of a feather flock together.
yeah, they do. And so here we are.
Especially if they're out drinking in a car. It's in the Bible.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's in the Bible that birds of a feather flock together. Yeah. Now, that's a good example of some of my silliness. Any other thoughts or comments or complaints or criticisms? Or it's too late for complaints anyway. Debbie's already gone.
Oh, no complaints.
All right, let's pray. Lord, we're indeed grateful and thankful to you once more, as we are every day, but especially every Sunday, when we have the opportunity to gather with our friends and to read your word and to talk about it. We just praise you and thank you for the opportunity to learn about you. We've come here not only for that reason, but also to worship you, and we want to worship you in the name of Jesus of Nazareth, who indeed is the Son of God. Amen. God bless you for being in his house today.